Hello, I'm Matthew Ward, author of Legacy of Ash. We're going to do a bit of a reading today, reading from Chapter 3 of the book, which introduces us not only to the city of Tresia, where a lot of the story takes place, but some of the characters that we'll be spending some time with along the way. So yeah, should be quite a short reading, so hopefully I will fluff fewer words than I normally do, but who can say, so just bear with me. The city of Tresia, bastion of the north and heart of the Republic, lay cloaked beneath the gloom of night. Barnacle-crusted tricons stood waist-deep and motionless in the dockside tidal waters. The evening sun, still a glimmer through the Silverway Tavern's leaded windows at the first pull, had long since slunk beneath the horizon. The vibrant bustle of day had retreated alongside. The great city was subdued, and its river wharves a haunt for dubious endeavours. It was no place for the sons and daughters of quality to seek their pleasures, and it was therefore inevitable that many did so. Malachi Rivek stared into the brimming tankard, awash with that peculiar caution born of inebriation. Jeers, arguments, and snatches of dockers' shanties burst from the fog of conversation and echoed beneath the Silverway's sunken beams. Malachi knew it would continue into morning, as would he, if he wasn't careful. I should be getting home. He straightened to be heard over the hubbub. I'd promised Liliana I'd not make a night of this. Across the table, Casimir leaned back in his chair. Eyes widened in mock affront. What? You'd leave me to celebrate alone? Rosa snorted and fixed him with a cold stare. Thanks. Casimir waved an airy hand in dismissal. I love you as a sister, but there's a bond between men that you couldn't begin to understand, especially when that bond is tempted in battle, as was ours. Matter settled, he raised the tankard for a generous swallow. Rosa's expression didn't falter. I see. When did you last stand your place in the line, Malachi? Long enough to know he'd no place there. Malachi winced. How had he ended up the villain? Not that it was a surprise. United, they four were the closest of friends. Divided by absence, as they were that evening by perennial lateness, and conversation turned inevitably to contest. I fight with words these days. And I fight with steel. Rosa leaned low across the table. In fact, I recall my sword saving Lord Cerridon's hide at Tarvalion, and at Treger's Dyke. Casimir bristled. And Lord Cerridon remembers someone's effusive thanks after that bloody business on Fellhallow's southern edge. Might it have been you, O Storied Reaper of the Ravon? Ha! My point precisely. You and I have shared a score of battlefields. Malachi hasn't so much as held a sword in 10 years. She cracked a sour smile. Tell me again how our bond is the lesser. Knight of the Republic though Rosa was, she wielded her wits every bit as skilfully as her sword. She'd one day serve the Republic well on the Grand Council, if she could bear to forego the green surcoat of the SMA chapter house and her chamfered armour for a velvet gown. That she'd abandoned the former for the subtleties of civilian garb was a rare honour. She seemed softer without steel, but Malachi wasn't fooled. He knew just how many Hadari she'd sent into the mists, and besides, even now the sword belt remained. No amount of reason could have persuaded her to strut about unarmed. Casimir would never reach council rank. He'd a tendency to speak without thinking, strong drink or no. It was part of his charm. But on this one occasion, Casimir held his tongue and glowered at Rosa. She arched a knowing eyebrow. Malachi stifled a grin. The lines of battle were shifting. The kind thing would be to deflect Rosa's ire. Then again, Casimir's escape would only hasten Malachi's own turn as underdog. So he glugged a mouthful of ale, wiped his lips, and stoked the fires. You mustn't mind him, he said. Casimir's worried he'll not resist your charms if I leave you alone. Joking aside, Rosa and Casimir would have made a handsome couple. They shared hair the colour of ripened wheat and eyes as pale and blue as the winter skies. Rosa's face was that of a divine Sarathi, if that Sarathi was given to scowling. Casimir had a lantern jaw and a heavy brow that echoed portraits of kings long dead. But they'd been friends too long. They all had. Any lingering attraction lay buried beneath a lifetime of faults and foibles witnessed at close hand. Malachi was content with his own unremarkable looks, even if his dark hair was already flecked with grey. A honed mind was a far more valuable tool than a handsome face, and lasted longer. Rosa snorted. I'd sooner kiss a goat. Malachi grinned into his tankard. And why not? Mused Casimir. We all know you've a thing for beards. Just as we all know you can't grow a beard worthy of the name. Casimir slumped against the chair's backrest. He clapped his hands across his chest in mock pain. Your words. They're a blade in my heart. Rosa chuckled. It's a large target. You'll survive. Hands still to his chest, Casimir closed his eyes. Not so. Even now I hear the flutter of sable wings. Lumestra sends her handmaidens. They'll weep golden tears as they carry me off. I'm not sure the Sarathi weep tears for anyone, much less a man. Rosa hooked an eyebrow. Then again, you're barely a man, are you? Casimir's eyes flickered open. Is that curiosity I hear? Alas, my dear, beautiful sister-at-arms, you've missed your opportunity. I'm pledged to higher things. With an exasperated sigh, she turned to stare across the room. You're impossible. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Casimir grew unusually sincere. My heart belongs to another. Rosa offered no response. Enough, Malachi decided, was enough. So you're still going through with it? He asked. Without a flicker of hesitation, Casimir straightened up. My mother's mood will soften once she meets Kellen. How could it not? That aspiration struck Malachi as totally unfounded. A son saw much that remained hidden from acquaintances, but in this case, is your mother given much to softening? Rosa's expression could have been carved from stone. On occasion, why, I once saw her smile at Marek. Her steward? Malachi tried to picture Lady Abigail Kirridin favouring a servant with anything resembling warmth. He gave up. There were limits even to imagination. I don't believe it. It's true. If Casimir was at all offended on his mother's behalf, nothing of it showed. He happened upon one of the indentured maids making off with the silverware. Girl looked like death by the time he was done scolding her. Ah, now that did sound like the sort of thing to coax a smile from Lady Kirridin. I wouldn't have thought your mother could have trusted a Southwheeler near the silver. She hasn't, not since. Stripped them all of their papers and threw them onto the streets. They'll be in Dregmead now, hiding from the constabulary. Malachi scowled. Indentured Southwielders weren't technically slaves. Nonetheless, the Exodus brand on the palm meant they couldn't take paid work without papers. At best, Abigail Kirridin had doomed her servants to a life of starvation and criminality. Hold on. Rosa grunted. Are you drawing comparison between your betrothed and Marek, or your betrothed and a thieving servant? Casimir's lip twitched. I speak merely to my mother's occasional lightness of character. One smile. And you think Kellen Trelane can coax forth another? Rosa shook her head. You must be in love to be so blind. I'm surprised your mother hasn't disowned you. Disowned me? Her favourite son? Her only son, said Malachi. Casimir brushed the detail aside. Some friends you are, dousing my happiness. I shan't allow it. Kellen is to be my wife, and I the happiest man in the Republic. Malachi let the matter drop. He felt more than a little mean-spirited for needling his friend so. Whatever the complications of Kellen Trelane's Southwheeler heritage, Casimir was besotted. And after 2 betrothals ended by Hadari spears, he deserved a good marriage. And if it was one founded in genuine affection, rather than in furtherance of a dynasty, then Malachi envied him. Rosa drained her tankard. It's my round. Another? Malachi stared into the remains of his ale. He should have left hours ago. Now he'd face a lecture and a polite smile undercut by disdain. Easier to face them after another drink. Sure. Casimir lurched to his feet. Put your coin away. We celebrate in style, and at my expense. In fact... He paused, brow furrowed in thought. Malachi caught Rosa's eye, but the moment of shared realization came too late. I shall buy a drink for anyone who will offer toast to Kellen Trelane, Casimir bellowed. The jewel of the South Shires and the brightest star in any sky. The hubbub gave way to a chorus of cheers. Fists and tankards hammered at tables in approval. Casimir grinned broadly. He clambered atop his chair and drank in the adulation. Empty tankard in hand, he goaded the silver-waist clientele to greater uproar, conducting their raucous clamour as music sprung from an orchestra. Malachi released a sigh of relief. For a moment, he'd worried that, toast your Southwheeler whore elsewhere. The cheers fell away. Casimir froze, mid-gesture. I'm sorry, but I didn't quite catch that. Then I'll say it again, and clearer. Malachi twisted in his chair, striving to identify the speaker. There, in a booth by the crooked stairs. Near his own 35 summers than Rosa and Casimir's lesser tally. No intoxication in her face, nor in her husky voice. He's seen her before, at council. Not in the Privy Council chamber, but attending Lord Terev. His daughter. But what was her name? The woman stood. Like Rosa, she'd foregone a bare-shouldered dress for a close-fitting blouse, jerkin, and trews. Practical garb for a practical woman, especially when slimming it on the dockside. I lost my mother and sister at Zanya. You want to toast Trelane? Do it in the gutter where you both belong. Casimir jumped down and slammed his tankard onto the table. Malachi's memory snapped into place. Aska Terev. That was the woman's name. But not for much longer if something wasn't done. Malachi rose a trifle more unsteadily than he'd liked and blocked Casimir's advance. Then your kin sacrificed to make the Republic whole, he told Asker. Our divisions died with Katya Trilan. Let them remain in the past. Malachi Revek, ever the conciliator, sneered Asker. You don't speak for my family. Casimir growled. And you owe my betrothed an apology. Must I tear it from you? Malachi set her hand against his chest. Ignore her. To his relief, Casimir halted. There were too many swords in the Silverway. Casimir could only count on Rosa's in addition to his own. Judging by the stony faces at Asker's table, she had 3 supporters. As to the rest, most of the clientele wouldn't risk getting caught up in a noble's brawl. Probably. But you can never be sure once the blood was up. Rosa, said Casimir. Alone of the 3, Rosa still sat in her chair. Her crossed legs and propped elbow gave the impression of a woman taking her ease. However, her eyes darted back and forth, weighing up the odds. This would be better discussed outside. I like this tavern. I wouldn't want to see it damaged. Translation. Rosa didn't care for the prospects if it came to a straight fight. Malachi wasn't sure how he felt about that. The chances of walking away from a tavern brawl were much higher than a back-alley duel. The latter would spare Malachi and Rosa from injury, but it might cost Casimir his life. Well? Casimir folded his arms and levelled a stare at Asker. There was no amusement in his voice, no trace of the boisterous suitor of earlier. His smile belonged to a wolf. Malachi shuddered. This was the side of Casimir the Hadari saw. Asker didn't reply at first, her watchful eyes taking their own measure of the odds, but the outcome was never really in doubt. You didn't walk away from a challenge, however coded. Not with so many witnesses to hand and reputation at stake. Have it your way. There we go. Chapter 3, Legacy of Ash. What will become of the duel? What will become of Casimir? Well, you'll have to buy the book to find out.